Thank you all for coming. This is work primarily done by my student Yuan and the current student Lina. A bit of motivation here. All right. So I'm actually going to use for the first problem I'm going to talk about machine learning AI is the primary motivation here. These, as you all know, are increasingly being used to drive high stakes decisions. And whenever the stakes are high, and even sometimes when the stakes are low, um, you are going to get dishonest or gaming behavior. Here you have two opposing forces. On one hand, there's tremendous pressure for designers to open up the black box, okay? To look under the hood and see how these algorithms work to make them more transparent. And that's they should be. On the other hand, the minute you make something transparent, you disclose what the model is, they become the target, basically, right? Because it makes targeting and gaming much easier. All right. And so people have looked at this problem. Let's say I have a machine learning model, and if I tell you how it works, meaning what input it takes and how it generates the output, think about any number of things like resume screening, school admissions, and so on. If one knows how these systems work, then one can find ways to optimize their input so as to get a desirable output, right? So when people looked at this one-time interaction, you give me a classifier or any decision-making model, tell you how it works, the individuals are going to optimize their behavior. And as long as we assume, I would say probably correctly, that the cost of genuine effort is more than the cost of cheating. Okay, as long as you make that fundamental assumption, then this problem becomes very difficult to get around, right? Because if you assume the agent is utility maximizing, is rational, they will basically go toward the lower cost option. And so if you look at past work in this area, how do we design better decision-making systems? Oftentimes they have to get around this by relying on external mechanisms, meaning, okay, there's another authority that provides a subsidy or some alternative forms of rewards, in effect, making effort more cost effective, okay? Adding on top of this is the fact that there is information asymmetry here, which is, you open up your model, so the principle becomes transparent about how the model works, and yet it does not know the true cost of the agents, right? Each individual can be different. And therefore, if you are going to design these alternative mechanisms, becomes very difficult to actually make it right for each individual. Okay, so this is the fundamental limitation of what has been come to known as strategic classification problem. Okay. But of course, we know something else in our toolbox for all any of you who has ever worked on something close to Markov decision processes or, bandit problems and so on. These are sequential problems. With sequential problems come intertemporal intensive. Simply put, it just means current actions impact not only the present, but also future, right? Is that something we can leverage? Okay, so what we have seen in a few different frameworks is if we move from a one-shot formulation to a sequential model, and these are often formulated as a Stackelberg game, again, as in a one-shot problem, the principal designs the system, the agent is the follower, it reacts to the design. The only thing is what they are reacting to is a system that they will repeatedly interact with. Okay, so the principal, I'm using the word principal to mean the designer of the system, the agent best response to the design. The sequentiality lies in the repeated nature of this response, okay, with the responding to the system that the agent, that principal has designed. Now, I'm not going to assume that the system is an adaptive one. Okay, the system has been designed, but you should know, as in all Stackelberg game framework, the principal is designing the system in anticipation of what the agent is going to do. Okay. So where does the inter-temporal incentive comes about in this setting is effectively the agent's honest effort will be allowed to accumulate. Okay, think about learning to pass a test. If you actually have learned, then at least some of what you learned will stay with you for some time to come, right? Cheating, on the other hand, is going to be assumed to be short-lived, that its impact, even if temporarily it gives you the same effect. Okay. And this, of course, gives the principal more degrees of freedom to design the system to incentivize the agent. And that's my principal objective. Okay, so with that bit of motivation, I want to step through two sequential decision problems. The motivation is much more targeted at the first problem. The second problem is related, but not identical. Okay, so the first problem is a sequential strategic classification problem. Essentially, I'm going to assume instead of having a single classifier, the principal is going to design a sequence, and actually more precisely, a progression of classifiers. You can think of these as tests. They become progressively more difficult, okay? The agent can exert honest effort, but it can also cheat, okay? The focus is on understanding the strategic behavior of the agent and the optimal design of this sequence. The second problem is what I call an audit problem, okay? This is a case where it's desirable for the agent to pass the test. It will subject itself to this classification, but it is not mandatory. So the agent can actually opt out completely. Say, I don't want to take the test now. I know if I take the test and if I pass the test, I receive a certificate, but I can do without. So that's the setting. Here, the main difference in assumptions is the agent does not cheat, but then it can opt out. And by opting out, in general, it exerts lower effort. And so the principal's main goal is to design a system to incentivize the agent to participate. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Assuming that the principal takes this card, says what their test is going to be going out in the future. It's a Stackelberg setting, as in it's a dynamic setting, but the principal decides at time 0. These are all the tests I'm going to even conditional on the reports that I get.
Correct. That's why I'm saying this is not an adaptive system.
But it could be adaptive based on, it could be, I could give the menu saying, okay, if you give me all of the, whatever your report is, you do this, I'm going to take this action.
It is not dependent on the agent's action, correct? And partly is because the agent's actions are anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, it
So,
could,
yeah,
but it's still at time 0, you're giving the whole thing, as opposed to reacting to the agent.
Correct. Now, you will see that in the audit problem, once they pass the audit, the system stops, the problem terminates. And if it fails, it triggers another one. Okay, so not all of them may come to materialize, but yeah, it's all pre-designed and announced. All right, so let me get into the first problem. Okay, so as I said, the agent has to go through a progression of classifiers with increasing difficulty and rewards. And each level is essentially represented by 3 outcomes: promotion, relegation, or status quo. For those who follow European soccer, these are terms you're probably very familiar, and that means exactly that, okay? The agent its goal is to maximize total discounted reward over infinite horizon. And so this is an illustration of that. You have the total of L levels, and each level you take a test, you can get promoted, relegated, or stay output, this is essentially represented by a ternary classifier that gives binary output in addition to an abstention option. Okay, so the abstention is when confidence is low, I don't declare either, and the agent gets to stay at the same place. Yes.
Here we assume the output of the classifier is stochastic random.
No, so the particular this version I'm presenting is deterministic.
There's no Markov.
It's there's no that it's correct. Yeah. The in the second problem, the output is stochastic, and we also have a stochastic version of this problem. The results are not as complete as you can imagine the deterministic system. Okay. Now, because there is this, I think you can extend this a bit more because we allow the extension. Sorry, the abstention. So there is a range in the middle that you do not declare outcome. What does the principal want? Okay, I'm going to say there are a number of things the principal wants to accomplish. One is to eliminate cheating, meaning that if I publish the sequence of classifiers, I want the best response to be such that there's no cheating. Okay. The second is if I am to publish this, I want the agent to attain the highest level. Okay, I want that to be their best response, and the thresholds which I'm going to show, the highest level, of course, is associated with some inherent qualification state. Okay, that we are going to associate with the agent. If you give me a a starting, let's say, objective, can you take the agent to this level? Then as the designer, I essentially am looking at a problem, how many stages, how many do I need to have this, and how should they be, how should I set the thresholds? And can the agent hit that target by achieving the highest level? And that's basically the last one is, given this target, can I limit this number L and limit the rewards that I give out? Okay. So there's no competition. It's a single agent. Yes, there's no competition. Correct. Each one takes its own sequence of tests. Correct. Yes.
It doesn't have a type. I mean, you could think of a problem where the agent has, you have L levels and agent has a type which is L. And you want the agent to rise up to their level and not beyond. So.
Correct. And these are all, I think, fantastic directions. Right now, it's a single agent. We do not model.
That's not type for them.
Yeah, but you will see in some of the numerical result, you can see what situations we run into. Okay. Okay, so here's more precisely what the model is. Okay. The agent is given by state, and the state is a couple. Where it is in that sequence, that's L. X is what we call attribute, and this is the agent's private information. Okay, and this is sometimes we call qualification state. This is a true representation of the skill or the knowledge level of the agent's X. Okay, then you have something called feature Z of T. This is the observable side of the agent. This is the input to the classifier. So that's where the cheating can happen, because the classifier is taking Z, not X. X, it does not see. The agent can take two types of actions. These are continuous quantities that each comes with a cost C plus C minus. So A plus is the honest action and A minus dishonest action. Okay, so it's effort and cheating. And clearly what we're going to assume that effort is more costly than cheating. Okay. And so this, you can see the distinction between two types of action. Whereas for the feature, both positive and negative actions act in identical ways onto the feature. So essentially, you can cheat and make yourself look identical to as if you exerted honest effort. But the cheating action does not impact the inherent feature. Okay. So this is why if you come up with a combination of A plus and A minus, well, you can make yourself basically look the same and obtain the same instantaneous classifier output. Okay. The reward. With each increasing level, this R is a constant, you basically get a multiplier of that R. So basically, as you go higher, you get more rewarded. You can ignore that -1. That's largely a consequence of me counting this L starting from 1 rather than from 0. Essentially, I don't want to give them reward at a level, the starting level. Okay. Now, two crucial assumptions. If you look at how the agent's attribute evolves, this gamma here is the portion of their previous feature that gets retained to the next time step. So this is what we call retention. And this is a reflection of, so this is a number between 0 and 1. It basically says, as time progresses, you don't keep everything you've learned. And so part of the effort that you exerted earlier is going to be lost. The second is countering that. This is what we call leg up. This given by this constant delta. This leg up basically reflects, I would say, some very realistic observation, which is as you achieve higher levels, your learning environment becomes better. And so that actually contributes to your true attributes. To give you a very simplistic example, if you did well on the midterm, the teacher would take notes, and the second half of the semester may call on you more often to answer questions because they now recognize you. So even though you haven't made more effort, your ability to attain to achieve the same amount attainment may well become cheaper, essentially. So you get that benefit. Now, we generally think of this delta as an unfair advantage. Okay, so basically the achievement begets achievement. As you go higher, you get more and more rewarded. It turns out it's actually a very crucial part of the model. The objective, as I said, is discounted total rewards minus the cost. Okay, so this is the agent. The principal, on the other hand, designs a sequence of these thresholds, and this is basically the classifier I mentioned earlier. Each classifier is essentially given by two thresholds, an upper mu and a lower mu. If you go up, attain the higher one, you get promoted, otherwise you get dropped to the next one. And then if you're in between the classifier stay where you are. So this describes everything in between 1 and L. And of course, as 1 and L, you take away a few branches. Okay. The principal's problem, there are different ways to do this given the set of goals that I have. This is the one that I'm about to show. So the principal's problem is that it is given a unit reward. Okay, so it is not quite the budget, but it's given that basically says for each level of advancement, this is the unit reward you can give out, and it's given a target M. This target M is basically our way of saying at the end of this process, that's the minimum attainment we want the agent to accomplish. And that is in terms of the intrinsic attribute X. Okay, so the principal wants to essentially design the sequence, complete with how many there are and what the thresholds are with each one, subject to the fact that the best response solution does not include cheating. And in the end, in the limit, the agent's attributes hit the target and they reach the highest level. Okay. Okay, so the solution to this problem is a Stackelberg equilibrium. Yes.
Dave, question. So why avoid cheating is important if we can let the agent eventually make their entry larger than n?
You have a very good point. As a matter of fact, in some systems, that's exactly what we see. So the I think as when we started out, because we wanted to see whether it's even possible to induce pure honesty through this design, I think this is the problem we landed on. In my numerical simulation, we actually adopt an approximate objective function where we actually do relax these constraints. And you will see there are indeed scenarios where the agent actually achieved the highest level and M through a combination of honest and dishonest means. Yes.
Yeah, thinking like we have the lag up, right? The agent maybe cheat at the beginning, then leverage the lag.
That's exactly what happens. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So Stackelberg equilibrium basically says the agent designs this, and then the agents find the optimal solution for it to optimize its utility function, but we want its best response to basically satisfy these constraints. Okay, so I don't need to get into this. This is really just a graphical way of reminding what the dynamics are. You start with some L and X. You choose an action, go to feature, the agent's feature, and actually goes through the transition and then goes through the classifier, spits out what your next levels are, and you get reward. You advance, you will drop your next level. And then before you reach the next time step, your attribute goes through this retention and lag off transformation. Okay, so that's the problem. Questions? Yeah.
So I assume the cost of cheating for the agent must be lower, right?
The cost for cheating is low. Yeah. So C minus is strictly less than C plus. Yes. Otherwise, we won't have much of a problem. Okay, so the first thing I want to show is that you take this and you look at in which region this problem is simply impossible. Okay, that the agent will never choose an improvement action or take an effort. And that is given by this line, this shaded region. And the contrast is this 45-degree line, and that's C plus equals C minus. So this bigger region, the yellow region, is what you would have in a one-shot problem. Okay, and this smaller impossibility region is what you have when you look at this in a sequential way. And so effectively the introduction of, so beta here is a discount factor. So the introduction of the agent's foresightedness combined with the retention effectively lowers the effort cost. Okay, so for the remainder of this, clearly we are only going to be looking at the complements, okay, not the region in which it's impossible, even though one of my numerical example is precisely in that region. Okay, so let me show you a bit about in the simplest case when I have L equals 2. Okay, so the agent is essentially just repeatedly interacting with a single classifier. Okay, do I get to stay at the higher level or do I get thrown back? And what does that look like? So here the color coding is pink is only cheating, green is only effort, and purple is a combination of both. One thing to look at, so if you look at this is what happens when there's no lag, so delta is 0. You basically get this that basically says, if you set the threshold, so the vertical axis is new, is the threshold of that single classifier. And X, the horizontal is where the agent is currently at in terms of attributes. If you make the test too difficult, then the agent is going to either cheat if it's already close enough or not do anything. Okay? if you make it easy enough, then if they're within the right region, they will make an honest effort to pass it. And then you have this region in the middle that if you close enough, you make an effort, otherwise you cheat, or even if you're further away, you don't do anything. So the flag is no action, okay? The introduction of the leg up effects is basically shift this whole thing up. It doesn't actually change the distance between those two quantities and basically create this bottom left triangle, which is a mixture or cheating. Okay, and you can use this then to look at what in the limit where the agent will land on given where it currently is. And that basically somewhat tracks the optimal action. So here, for instance, if the agent is here, they will attain level 2. And if they are here, for instance, they will basically be permanently stuck at level 1. Okay, so you can basically we can get a pretty good understanding of what happens in this case. Okay, now the principles problem. So this is more general, it's an arbitrary L. So the first question is this problem even feasible? Okay, going back to what Lei asked, okay, this is just reproduction of the same problem. The first thing we know is if there's no leg up, if delta is 0, then this problem is infeasible beyond some target quantity. Okay, so this is what I was saying. It turns out if we want to incentivize the agent to attain an arbitrarily high level, we need leg up. Okay, the reason is because leg up is what counters the attribute depreciation. Okay, so this is the first part. Second part, so if there is leg up, so delta is greater than 0, what do we know? If the under the conditions that highlighted here, if this unit reward is too low, and that's the threshold there, then again this problem is infeasible for and actually for any m. But if you can set the reward sufficiently high, then under some additional mild conditions on this C minus, then this problem is feasible for any m. So any target you set, you can use this mechanism to incentivize the agent to accomplish. Okay, one such feasible sequence is actually a constant distance sequence. You just make the threshold equal distance, and then you can compute what that capital L is. And this sequence is also optimal if you happen to have that equality. Okay. So in characterizing this, what you realize is the problem is feasible only if your reward is basically meaningful, okay, reasonably high relative to the leg up effect. If it's too low, then the smaller gaps are required to maintain incentive to climb the ladder. But if the gaps are too small, then the agent can rely on only on leg up effect. Okay, so what is the agent's behavior when you design these systems? So let me show you some numerical results on the optimal mechanism. So this is what we computed using that approximate objective function so that these hard constraints are softened. Okay, so there will be violations, but close enough. The objective function is essentially a combination of classifier accuracy, robustness against cheating, agent qualification, cost of implementation. Okay, so here I show 4 cases. So the first column, C plus C minus, is given. Okay, we feed it into the problem. The rest are basically so we have a target, and then the rest are computed by the algorithm. Okay, so the first case is what we consider the case of learning a language where it's difficult, but faking it is almost as difficult as learning a language. So the C plus and C minus are very close, okay, and but not particularly high. So here you can design a perfect system with 6 levels. You can take the agent to the end level, and the R that you need is not very large, okay, and the principle attains very high utility. This is when the effort and cheating are both difficult, even though there's a gap. And you can see here, the principal needs a much higher reward to boot, and then a few, quite a pretty long sequence. The next case is simple tasks that are easily manipulated or easily faked. Here you see the principal essentially collapse everything into single and sufficient this single reward, but it does quite well. The last one is a particularly interesting one. So the last one is actually in the impossibility region. Okay, but with the approximate objective function, we can compute it. This last case is what I would like to call AI plus education. This is when learning is hard and cheating is very cheap. Okay. And so this is a prime example of you as the limit of the system, which is okay. So the principal tries very hard a sequence of A classifiers and small steps in, but ultimately attains very low utility. Okay, if you look at the agent trajectory, this is case 1. This is the ideal case. It is the color coding, the green is all honest effort, okay? Step by step attains the highest level. This is case 4. It's a total failure. The agent was never made any effort. It's all cheating and basically failed to reach the highest level. The next one is what Lei referred to. I call it partial failure, but depends on your vantage point. So in this case, the agent actually attains the highest level, but it is through a combination of cheating and effort, as the color indicates. All right, so that's my first problem. Question? Yes.
Okay, so since the principal can design the levels, right? But the discount factor remain the same, even like it's 5 level or 6 levels.
What remains the same?
Discount factor.
The discount factor remains the
So
same.
the
Yeah.
discount factor depends on number of levels.
So my immediate response is no, because even when you have a single level, the agent can actually move back and forth. The movement is not monotonic.
Okay.
So here, for instance, it goes between 5 and 4, 5 and 4, 5 and 4. So the actual amount of time it takes for you to attain the highest level is can be long, is not a constant. Also, once you achieve that level, you have to maintain. You have to continue to exert effort to remain at that level. That's what the limit is for. Yeah.
See that in case 1, the partial failure case, the progression of the agent is quite rapid. And you see the attribute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get a feel for the convergence rate before this comes.
Oh, the convergence rate. Yeah, I don't have much to say there at all. So here, I know the color is very faint. So the last one, so this is level. This blue curve is the attribute. The attribute appreciates slowly. The level attainment is extremely rapid, and that is entirely on cheating. So the background color here is pink. Yeah, interesting question. No. Yeah.
Usually when you motivate this, we're saying that the costs are not known for the part. That's usually the problem. I don't know C plus and C minus. Right. So, but I mean, it's implicitly used a lot. I mean, is there a way to think of where I can change the rewards as well over time and then sort of figure out how people are reacting?
So yes, so you're completely right. Not only C, this is a problem of perfect information. Okay, I know C and other
I just don't
parameters.
know the attribute of it.
Correct. So if I don't know C, then this has to be turned into a learning problem. You're gonna have to kind of estimate what C plus is and what C minus is. It would be.
Or we're tuning the rewards in some sense, changing the rewards.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. But I think the main takeaway to me is that essentially underneath it, if you have that information, it is actually possible in a big part of that problem space to design a system to induce the desirable behavior. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Mentioned that want to maintain certain level. Does that mean that you want to run this for a fixed number of times? Or do you stop as soon as you reach that level?
So the basic formulation is an infinite horizon. And the criteria is that your X in the limits is our target. Yeah. So one can look at a finite horizon. I think the idea is, if we put this in a learning context, that you don't want this attainment to be a one-time thing. You want to keep them there.
Discount factor anyway controls your horizon.
It's not what, I'm sorry.
No, your discount factor controls your horizon.
That is correct. That is correct. So yes, and you can clearly see how things change if the agent is more farsighted or more nearsighted. Yeah. Okay, so let me now move on to my okay, so there are a few things that we can readily do. One is I presented this as a scalar setting. You can extend this to vector setting. The other is our particular assumptions about how the attribute X evolves. You can actually assume that's something more general, and by analyzing the sensitivity of this function, you can basically go through the analysis. Not going to be as close form as I'm showing it here, but something can be done. Okay, now my next problem is, what if the agent doesn't even have to take the test? Okay, so here I basically put the agent in the middle of this and say you do it. But of course, there is a reward, so the utility gets maximized. Okay, now where does this problem come from? I would say originally, this problem comes from incentivizing developers to produce more secure software. Okay, if there's anything as a bad product, that's software, right? Okay, now, if you ever ask why is software not at the same quality as, say, your shoes or other durable goods? Have you ever asked yourself that question? With software, what you get, you assume is beta, that there are holes, there are deficiencies, and you're waiting for the next version to fix the previous problems. You never expect that when you buy a pair of shoes, correct? You expect them to work for at least a couple years, right? All right. Uh, there are, I would say, two main issues here. One is a lack of economic incentive. Security features hard to monetize, and software in particular, the market rewards first mover. Okay, they get them out, even though they know their vulnerabilities. Consequences of vulnerabilities can be uncertain because with all the known vulnerabilities, only a very small fraction of them ultimately get exploited. And it can be very hard to predict which ones get exploited. Okay. The last one is perhaps the most critical one is the cost of poor software is mostly borne by users and consumers, not by software makers, vendors. They're on the hook for no more than the price they sold it to you. Okay, if you got breached and you lost data and so on, that's on you, not on the software maker. So that's one area of barriers, economic incentive. The other is a lack of legal incentive. There's a lot of gray zone here. The chief of which is software a product or a service? That is an unsettled legal question, because if it's a service, then it's governed very differently than if it is product. All our liability laws are for product, not for service. And so that leaves room for broad interpretations. And it's also, some can be very difficult to attribute harm and assign liability. Okay. GDPR did set an example for liability, duty, and standard of care for handling personal data. Okay, so that is to say this, so what got us into this is this idea of, can we audit software? Okay, and can we get vendors to voluntarily subject themselves to this test? Okay, so the basic premise is, what if a government agency, and actually this framework was included in the 2023 National Security Policy Directive, which of course was rescinded a year later. Anyhow, the idea is, huh? Let's say you have an agency like NIST that offers optional and free product security audit. And for those who pass the audit, it basically in full or in part waive their liability associated with software security. Okay, so here the agent is the vendor. Okay, the software vendor or developer. The question would be, under what conditions should it subject itself to such a test? And once it enters the test, what is the optimal strategy? And that strategy takes the exact same form as that that action A is the effort, right? How much do I put in building the software? The principle here is the auditor. From its perspective, the question is how to maximally incentivize vendors to opt in and how to incentivize desirable behavior. All right. So what is the model? So I already said the participation is voluntary, but once you subject yourself to the test, you have to pass. You can quit, but you will not be allowed to release your product. That's the assumption, because the idea is we cannot knowingly release something that is faulty, even though we allow you not to take the test at all. Okay. Failure to pass an audit will trigger another audit and so on, but the agent is able to just quit. Okay. I'm going to assume each test is an independent trial. It's informative, but not perfect. So this is the stochastic version of it. Informative just means I'm more likely to be right than wrong. Okay.
The vendor is not allowed to input their product.
They are. But independent trial means that I forget how you did last time, but I put you to a new test, right?
That's probably do.
They can, yes. For a large part, I'm going to assume I'm basically using the same test, but we have some result on what if you use harder or easier test. Yeah. The agent option, it can quit at the market at any time, but it walks away with nothing. Okay. Or it can continue to improve its effort ahead of each audit, as you just asked. And so this, again, is a discrete time MDP. It's actually a stopping time problem, but not a particularly interesting problem as a stopping time problem. So let's look at what agent will do if it opts in, okay? It has some initial effort, it exerts, it incurs some cost C of X. And then it submits this for audit because it agrees to participate. And that the audit is essentially given by this probability. And that's a function of the effort you have put in, and it spits out whether you pass or fail. One is pass, 0 fail. If you pass, the process terminates. You can go and put the product on the market and then you receive a revenue of R. That's your reward. If the outcome is negative, then the agent can choose to either quit, receive no reward, or continue. And by continuing, it can choose a new cumulative effort level anywhere between x0 and infinity. Okay, this is cumulative. So if it chooses x0, that means it decides to just try its luck again and not putting new effort. If somewhere in between that, it's new effort. If it's if x1 is greater than x0, then basically incurs additional cost. Okay, so that's the model. So again, I don't need to go through this. It's basically just a timeline of a sequence of events. What do we know about this problem, this optimal opt-in policy? Um, One is, and you probably have anticipated this, once opted in, one never quits because you don't actually get anything out of it. At the minimum, what you do is you don't exert new effort, you just keep trying it and hoping at some point, well, actually, with high probability, the luck is going to strike, and so you never quit. So that's why I'm saying this is not a particularly interesting stopping time problem. Um, Now, so what is its optimal decision in terms of choosing the next X? Turns out the optimal strategy is a non-decreasing sequence. Obviously, it's non-decreasing because X is accumulative, but these X's are basically maximizers of this G function if I assume this is static audit, meaning P1 equals P2 equals, so these are the same identical function. G is essentially a value function, okay? There's the cost of effort, and then you have a term that is essentially the reward modulated by your likelihood of passing, further modulated by the discounting. Beta is the discount factor, okay? And the optimal opt-in utility is basically the maximum value of this G function. So what does this solution look like? So let's look at the function G. If G has a unique maximizer, then the optimal policy is to invest the X star at time 0 and nothing thereafter, okay? If GX has two maximizers, then you basically have a set of equally optimal strategies. The first one is what I call one and done and be patient. So you invest this X low and nothing more. You just wait for success to happen. Or one and done and impatient. So you immediately invest this high maximizer, X high, and nothing afterwards. Or incremental and opportunistic. Okay, you invested low and then you increase to high at some point. Actually, it doesn't matter which point. These are all equally optimal. And this is if the shape of the G function is like this. So all these are equally optimal. They are not equally desirable by the principal, obviously. From the principal's point of view, it probably would prefer this, right? That for the agent to immediately put it all in. Okay, now I'm interested in what will get the agent to actually participate. So let's look at the agent's utility. This is actually their outside option. If they don't go through this, they can sell the thing for R. That's the reward. There is a development cost and there's a actually liability potentially that it's on the hook for. So with this part, I'm going to assume that the liability loss is random and it is influenced, it's actually given by this function, okay? It expresses the desire to view this agent as a risk-averse individual. That's where the risk attitude parameter alpha comes in. It's an exponent. You put exponential, you put the expectation in front of it. That's going to give you a concave utility. Okay. The Z is the random variable. So this is the actual random amount of loss that can materialize, and its mean and variance is a function of your effort, and both are decreasing in effort. And what is this C of X? It can be it's basically an increasing function of X, and you can simply take it as a linearly increasing. Doesn't make too much difference. Okay, the principle is profit neutral. So in this case, I'm specifically going to assume that the principle is basically using this simple test. And what it takes as input is the effort plus some white noise, okay? And there are two parameters that characterize the quality of the classified, the test. One is the hardness, and that's the threshold, mu. The other is accuracy, is uncertainty. That's the sigma. So you want the the noise to be low, it can be an easy but accurate test, or it can be a hard and inaccurate test, right? Okay, so what do we, so again, take the first case when I'm repeatedly using the same test. What we can show is that you have a kind of this threshold property that there exists some alpha bar, and that's the risk attitude for those that are more risky, that are risk averse than alpha bar, then they will all opt in. And for those below, they will basically stay out. Okay. And then you can look at what this boundary is as a function of the quality of the classifier. And the general takeaway is an accurate, meaning low noise, but not overly difficult, meaning low threshold audit attracts the most number of participants. That's probably not surprising. So if you're going to make a test, you want it to be accurate, you don't want to make it too difficult, okay? Since I am approaching the end of this, let me jump to the question of what if I use a sequence of different tests? So far, I'm just using the same P, right? So for this, I'm going to look at a special case, and then this is a linear test, okay? This basically says if your effort is above B, some B plus one, you're guaranteed to pass, okay? If your effort is below B, you're guaranteed to fail. In the middle, your probability of passing is basically increasing in X minus B. Okay, so the higher this B quantity, the harder this test. Now, this linear test actually maps very nicely to this legal framework called floor ceiling. Basically says if you're going to audit something, there has to be a floor, meaning that there's some basic criteria that has to check. So if I launch this software, does it even open the window? Does it open? There are basically few things you can check. If those don't pass, it's basically in this lower region. You fail. And then the ceiling is also called safe harbor. That is, if I go through the process you follow to make this thing, as long as you follow all of it, you guarantee a pass. Why? The idea is there'll always be some residual risk that perhaps is out of your control. Okay. So even though it looks simple, it actually has a nice map to the actual legal framework. And then you can figure out what this G is. And the principal's problem is, again, it's supposed I need to set a baseline. I only have one, okay? But I now want to maximize the agent's effort, subject to the fact that they will they are utility maximizing, and they will voluntarily participate, that there's incentive for them to participate. What do we know about this problem? Well, there is this threshold R over C. C is the unit cost and R is the reward, the revenue. If the return on investment is low, if this is below 1 minus beta, then it's impossible to entice the agents. It's not worth their effort, okay? This second region, okay, between these two, 1 minus beta and 1 over 1, it is incentivizable. You can figure out what that optimal B is for the threshold. The third region is when the return on investment is so high that even for a constant set of tests, you basically, they already do the maximum they will do. So there's nothing for you more for you to squeeze out. And so case 2 is the only incentivizable region with a non-static audit. Okay, so what do we know about that? Well, is that dynamic audit is given by the sequence of P's. A simplification of that is a truncated version. So I follow the sequence of P, but I stop at K. And after that, I repeatedly use this K test, okay? And actually, you can bound the difference between using these two. Now, depending on the beta, if beta is small, this bound is small. Small beta means a very nearsighted agent. Okay, large beta is farsighted, right? And in a two-step sequence, you have the same bound. So here, let me compare just two opposing two-step dynamic audit. On the bottom, the big B is a higher number B. So basically, you have an easy test followed by a sequence of harder tests, and a harder test followed by an easier test. Okay, so that's all I'm comparing. In that second region, where we know effort can be incentivized, and what you can obtain is, so again, this is the principles problem. The first one can induce higher effort than the optimal static audit. The second one cannot. So if you're going to do this, you start with an easier test and follow that with a harder test rather than the other way around. Okay, so this is effectively my last slide. So two sequential setups on basically how to design and pass a series of tests. There's some connection between these two, but clearly they're not. There are a number of assumptions we switched in and out. We continue to think about there's probably a deeper connection between the two because in both cases there's the matter of how do you get the agent to do the most, and then the matter of how do you actually entice the agent to actually participate in going through this to begin with. So that's the end of my talk. Thank you for staying so long and your attention.
Questions? The last one, just on that, or when you have some numerical results like near the end of the first half, are those things you're able to compute directly, or do you have to do simulations, or how does?
So we did compute directly, but we relied on an approximate objective function. So this is when you convert the constrained problem into an unconstrained problem. So you add all those constraints into the objective and you weight them. You basically punish the ones you didn't like. And that's why we actually get the cheating as part of the best response. If I were faithfully solving my original problem, that would be I wouldn't be able to solve it. The problem is infeasible. And in general, that constraint problem is much harder to solve. So this is an approximation. Yeah.
Question, and it's not an area in common, but you know the linear test that you had, where you had, you know, the linear test.
Linear test,
Yeah, so if you actually had a nonlinear function, which was strictly constant, do you think that you could still get results?
I'm
It will provide more value, I
Yeah.
know that there is a way to kind of.
I'm happy to try. I think we will get less of the more precise bounds, but in terms of directionality, we may be able to show that again, this in general, you should do easier followed by harder tests.
I was trying to figure out in terms of like design it, the overall goal is that they actually take this quicker or whatever, there must be some metric that one. That's what you're doing in the principal problem, actually optimizing the thing.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, but I guess when you have a nonlinear function. You have to do, but yeah. It's not clear.
Something to think about. Yeah, thank you.
So, for the second problem, the reason why the agent won't just wait there, just randomly try it because they got discount factor. Like if they pass late, then the value is smaller.
Yeah, and so when they wait, that's so if you look at the XL, right? So basically they did XL and then they wait, right? The other is X high, XH. So the yes, so the cost is different, but the second one is going to terminate sooner.
Yeah, because discount factor.
Correct. And so the total utility is identical. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
There were no questions.
All right.